The day has finally come and I'm going to get to try the actual Nigerian Guinness. Hello and welcome back to the channel, and yes, that's right, I finally found a proper bottle of the Nigerian Guinness Foreign Extra. Foreign Extra. I keep getting the names confused. They do a Foreign Extra and then there's a special export. I just did a clip, I called it the Foreign Export. It's not, it's Foreign Extra, and I finally got a bottle of the real deal after quite a lot of talking about this beer and accidentally buying the fake version, which is ironically actually brewed in Dublin where Guinness are from. But anyway, it's here, the proper Nigerian Foreign Extra, weighing in at 7.5%. I actually found a 4-pack of these in my local Sainsbury's, which was quite convenient. They also sold singular larger bottles, but, well, they weren't too keen on giving a direct comparison on price to volume or price to millilitres, and it actually turned out a touch cheaper, well, per litre to buy the 4-pack, so something to note. Interestingly though, these are not 330ml bottles, but are actually 325ml bottles, so you do lose a little bit, but yeah, overall this still works out. That must be just a Nigerian standard 325 for some reason, but anyway, it is what it is, and it is just an amped up Guinness in effect. The Irish version of this was, well, it was very enjoyable, but maybe not as intense as I'd hoped or expected, having heard other people's opinions about this one. But now, well, we have it, the real absolute deal. So before we break into it, here is a quick look at the bottle. I mean, they look identical, whether they are actually from Nigeria or from Ireland, but this one, as I say, is the real deal. And yeah, I am very excited about it. And just to prove it, I don't know if you're going to be able to see there if I zoom in, but yeah, brewed under license by Guinness Nigeria with a Nigerian address. So no sign of brewed in Dublin or anything like that, which means we are absolutely, yes, on the right track. Now, I'm going to use a nice fancy glass for this because it's the only one I'm drinking today. And, well, let's just get it open. It does have the nice Guinness harp on the cap, which is just, well, just a nice touch. But yeah, let's get into it and see what the fuss is really all about. In the glass then, it is an absolutely jet black beer. Holding it up to the studio light, there really is nothing coming through there. It's got a nice kind of, it's almost like light toffee coloured head to it, solid one finger job, and it looks like the previous one I had, to be honest, the Irish version. Not a great deal of difference. It smells very similar as well. It's big, thick, treacly, molasses. It's all those rich notes, you know, brown sugar, dark treacle, toffee. And there's a nice rich roastiness to it as well, kind of proper deep espresso notes just hiding in the background beneath all of that intense, almost cakey sweetness. Interestingly though, despite how sweet it is, the alcohol is coming through. It's 7.5%, which is definitely a strong beer, but by today's craft standards is pretty normal, let's be honest. It's not sessionable, but you know, there are plenty of 7 to 8% beers out there right now, even in the supermarkets, and it's not hiding that at all. It's very quite prickly, quite pokey on the nose, and also, despite the immense sweetness, I'm picking up just a little hint of something slightly savoury. I don't really know what that is. It's not salty as such, but there's just a really subtle, almost kind of umami experience in there somewhere on the nose. Not sure if it's going to transfer to the taste or not, but there's only one way to find that out, and well, that's to get into it, so let's do it. Cheers. Happy finally finding the right beer day. Oh, wow, that is different. That is actually really quite different from the Irish version, the Irish brewed one. Well, it's a lot more intense. I think it's fair to say. Both are sweet, but the Irish one was very sweet. It was very cakey, very dessert-like. This, well, it has serious bite, is what I'd say. It's the booze, but also there's this kind of bitterness that just wasn't really there in the Irish version. It's much more intense. And again, there is that savoury edge that there was on the aroma. It's really quite complex, this beer. It's going to take some thinking about to really properly understand exactly what is going on. And as you probably know by now, there is only one way to do that, and that is a proper in-depth top to bottom taste test. So let's get into it, shall we? So initially, light, prickly slightly with the carbonation. It's not overly carbonated for the style, but there is a bit dancing around there on the front of the tongue. And you do get that kind of deep, dark roast malt bitterness really coming in quite strong at the front there. You would be forgiven that in that first moment thinking this is just a very trad roasty stout. And then first third of the tongue, it does, to be honest, what a lot of stronger stouts do, and it kind of falls back to this almost neutral, mineral forward, slightly refreshing, almost kind of default, I guess kind of dry stout quality. It's just nice, to be honest. There's nothing shouty about it. It's just there. You're starting to get a hint of something a little bit sweet, but it's not very strong at that point. Moving on, middle part of the tongue is where all of those bigger, sweeter notes come in. A lot of vanilla showing itself on the taste, and a few hints towards that kind of depthy treacle brown sugar. And I'll be honest, mixed in with that vanilla note, it's actually becoming more like really dense, intense fudge, but it never gets too sweet. It's nowhere near as sweet as the aroma was going to suggest, actually. You're just left with this kind of, okay, it's nice, it's palatable. And then as you get to the back of the tongue, it really starts to change quite, well, violently, to be honest, because a bit of the sweetness stays, but it's more like the intense molasses of kind of like a dark treacle. It's not sugary, if that makes sense. It's that richness, that intensity that you get from treacle. And then a huge raft of both bitter and weirdly savoury stuff comes in as well. It's quite contrasting. And it's taken me a while, but I think I know what that savoury thing is. And it's Marmite, which shouldn't be a huge surprise really, given that Marmite do use a huge amount of Guinness's leftover yeast for their yeast extract paste. But this is really on the nose with it. Like, it's really there, distinctly almost burnt, charred, thick, gloopy, sticks to your tongue, sticks to the roof of your mouth, and the taste sits. This would be a fantastic beer with a strong cheese. Really would, like some really strong mature cheddar. There is more interesting stuff out there, I'm sure, but you know, Marmite is a very distinctive flavour and goes very well with kind of traditional British and Irish cheeses. So yeah, a very strong cheddar would probably be the way to go, although some goat's cheese might not be a bad shout as well. That's the first time I've ever done cheese recommendations. I should do more of those. Love me some cheese. Anyway, continuing though, the aftertaste, it lightens up briefly. It goes back to that kind of, you know, mineral forward dry stout thing. You are left with that intense bitterness still. That just continues. That stays with you for a very, very long time. But the actual aftertaste itself goes back a bit sweeter. Vanilla comes back in, kind of, you know, more sugary elements to some degree. And as that Marmite flavour starts to fade away, the coffee comes back too. I think it's actually just kind of that diluted Marmite thing turns into a more traditional kind of coffee stout, coffee note. It's distinct, dark, rich espresso. It's not a fluffy, smooth kind of, you know, sweet coffee thing. It's distinctly intense, but because it happens so long after you've swallowed it, it's not strong, if that makes any sense at all. It's just kind of the reminiscence of a strong coffee rather than the actual thing itself. And I think this beer will change a lot as you get through it. I'm reviewing this over the space of about 20 minutes, maybe a bit less. If you sat with this for an hour, I think you get a lot of different notes out of it. Mine's not too cold, it's not too warm, it's probably around 8 or 9 degrees at this point, so it's, yeah, pretty much where it should be, I think. But It's a thinker's beer, this one. There is a lot to go at. It's not giving you all up front in one go. It changes while you're drinking it, both in terms of just from your initial sip to the swallow and over time. But I'm a little bit hard pressed to say whether I like it more than the Irish brewed one. It's definitely a more interesting beer. It's much more depthy, complex. Again, the thinker's drink. It helps. It's got enough to really analyse and sit there and consider. But if you're not into some more intense stout flavours, then actually the Irish brewed one might be a bit more up your street, because that was much more cakey, much more, well, sweet and easy to drink, and probably hit its ABV quite a lot better than this does. But I have to say, I can understand why people rave about it, because compared to, well, what other bottled Guinnesses can you get these days? There's the special export. That is very nice, I have to say. But also, you know, other than that, we're really talking about just kind of Guinness original, and well, compared to that, this is leaps and bounds. It's not meant to be the same thing, of course, but this is distinctly a very different but enjoyable experience, and I definitely won't shy away from the other 3 bottles that I've got of it, because it is very nice indeed. I'm going to have a quick look at the bottle here to see if there's any other information. It says, brewed to travel the world with more hops for a bold, intense, rich flavour. This is Guinness with the adventure in its soul. Serve chilled and drink in the beauty of Guinness Foreign Extra Stout. Interesting that it's heavier hopped, because whilst there are some kind of light, maybe grassy green notes in there, they're really just kind of on the periphery compared to the intensity of the malt bill in this. So I'm a bit surprised, but I guess it is the tradition to high hop beers designed for travel. So maybe, you know, maybe it's just bittering hops. Maybe it's not big floral modern stuff. Maybe it's just a load of fuggles or something in there, but it works. It's nice. And that really is all it says. As I said, it's 7.5%, 325ml bottle, which is a bit obscure, but actually I think it's just the right amount. I mean, a 330 would have been fine as well. We're only talking about a tiny splash more, but yeah, you wouldn't want necessarily the big bottle to drink on your own of this unless you really, really liked it, because it is just that intense at times. I'm quite happy just sitting here drinking this 325ml at a time, because I think it just suits the beer just down to the ground. And that really, I think, is all I've got to say about it. So where does it rank amongst all other Guinnesses? Well, it's in the top. It's in the top tier, if I'm honest. It is a fantastic and interesting look at, well, how Guinness is presented and can be brewed in other locations. It is distinctly different to everything else, and distinctly different enough from, as I said, the Irish brewed version of the same beer. Go and try it for yourselves if you like the sound of the flavours I just described, really, because it won't be for everyone, but for those who do like that considered dark intensity, well, I think you're in for an absolute treat. And that is all I've got to say about it. So as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you haven't already, subscribe, if you would be so kind. And I'll catch you next time. Cheers. Right, and he's going to find some cheese.